Hi, welcome to God Stories today. My name's Chris Thompson. You guys coming? Hello and welcome to God Stories today. I feel quite intimidated for this interview because I've got a proper broadcaster in the studio, Donna Birrell from the BBC. I've got someone from the BBC in my studio. This is the best.
You are very silly.
Welcome. It's really great to have you here.
Well, it is just so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for asking me. Do you know, honestly, because I love God Stories today, and I'm really, really, really privileged to be sitting in this chair after some amazing people. Thank you.
That is so very kind of you. Before we get into who you are, I just want to remind you lovely folk, you can check us out on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Just look at God Stories Today and it'll all be there. And if you want to email me, it is, let me get this right, godstories@gmail.com about anything and anything. But in particular, if you'd like to be interviewed yourself, it'd be great to have that dialogue with you. So, welcome to you and welcome to you. So I normally start off with a snapshot for the viewers before we go back to the beginning of your God story. Who are you right now?
Right, goodness me, that's a question to start. I'm Donna, and I am so privileged to be here at this moment. I am very much on a journey. So who am I right now? My goodness, I work for the BBC, as you say. I'm a journalist. I'm privileged to work at the moment for BBC Radio Cornwall, and I am a mum. I have a 20-year-old son. I've been married for 30 years.
Husband's name?
I'm Adrian.
Hello, Adrian.
Hello. And I have been privileged to meet some incredible people in my life who have enriched my journey. And yeah, I'm still very much on that journey.
Donna's given me a few pointers as to her journey thus far, and it really is quite rich indeed. Bless her, she claims it's not, but it really is. Trust me, it really is. So stick around. But you know what? Can I just start off with a few questions about what it's like to work for the BBC? Is that right?
Yeah, of course it is.
In my head, I think you get the odd email from head office, wherever that might be, probably London, and it's kind of like, come up to this star-studded gala and meet all the stars or something like that, and off you trot with your husband Adrian, and then you go. Does that happen?
Yeah. Well, do you know, I started work at the BBC in 1989, so a long time ago, and I was lucky to work at BBC Television Centre. So do you know what? It was a little bit like that.
That's so
cool. I know. And do you know, the first day that I started at the BBC, we were sort of shown around, and they had the big studio, one of the big studio doors open on the ground floor, and it was the big old Studio One. And we could hear all this music, and they were recording Top of the Pops.
No!
Yes, and I remember, do you remember a group called Black Box? And they were getting towards number one. No, I know, you are so much younger than me. And they were recording Ride on Time.
Oh, I know that one.
And it was absolutely brilliant. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is what it's like to work for the BBC. That was the last time I ever saw a recording of Top of the Pops. No, because then you get bogged down into your work and your life there. But it was an incredible place to work.
Who's the most famous person that you've seen in the BBC then?
Oh gosh, my goodness. Probably at the time Tony Blair. He was Prime Minister at the time.
Right.
Probably Tony Blair. Oh, but my all-time favourite, I was sitting having lunch in the canteen, famous BBC canteen, and
I'm so jealous.
The next day.
I shouldn't say that.
Sorry, no, don't be. But at the next table, and I still can't believe it. there was Clive Dunn from Dad's Army and the 2 writers as well, and Ian Lavender Pike. And they were talking about Dad's Army.
Oh,
and
wow.
I just thought,
Historic.
my goodness me. Yeah, historic. And I thought, wow, because that's still one of my all-time favourite programmes.
Right.
Saturday isn't Saturday without Dad's Army.
Really?
Sorry. Yeah, but that's just me.
That's so cool. When you went for your job, we will get to the beginning, I promise
sorry,
you.
yes.
I'm just interested to know what the job description was. It broadcasting straight away, or were you doing something?
No. My first job at the BBC was rather grandly titled Assistant Picture Editor, but it basically meant that I worked in news, and you had to stand by the recycle machine and tear the labels off the tapes because everything was recorded on videotapes and put them through the recycling machine. But
you were at the BBC.
Yes, and I was having BBC coffee. But then, kind of worked my way up to, picture editor and so on, and then moved across into becoming a journalist. So what they called in those days a multi-skilled journalist. So you learnt a bit of everything.
Right.
And then I went to work. One of my favourite memories as well, the most beautiful, beautiful lady, Jill Dando.
Oh.
I worked for a little while on writing summaries, the news summaries, and she was the presenter. And she was such a beautiful woman because she used to come in day after day, and I'd sit opposite her, and she said, gosh, I really don't feel I should be here. I'm not worthy of being here in this newsroom. And of course, Jill Dando, amazing. Yeah. So it was a really wonderful place to work. And then I moved across when News 24, which is now the news channel, started, and worked there, and it was great.
In what capacity? As a broadcaster or?
As a senior journalist, actually, which basically meant that you would write the news, and you had a small team, so you would basically decide what you were putting in your running orders, respond to the breaking news, and then you would what we called output an hour or two of news in the gallery, which I absolutely loved. So that was great. So it was a great time.
And last question about the BBC before we go back to the beginning. When you went for the job that you now hold in BBC Radio Cornwall, I imagine the interview, and there was probably on the job description a ton of stuff, but was there anything about the voice? Because it's also like if you work for the BBC, you have like velvet voice, you know what I mean?
No, nobody's ever mentioned the voice. No, Isn't it funny? Because I came down to Cornwall, and I was actually on attachment, so I was commuting between. We relocated. We get there. We get there. Sorry, I'm digressing and rambling. Sorry, and so when I started at Radio Cornwall, I read the news, and then I'm so fortunate to have my programmes.
That's amazing.
So but no, the voice wasn't really ever mentioned.
Actually, this truly is the last question about BBC. Then we will go back. And I imagine you have like a Sunday morning show, don't you? Right?
Yes.
Is it ever the case that you turn up in the studio, and because I would be worried about this, that you start your programme and then you think, I've got nothing to say. Something happens, you're meant to respond to it. You think, I don't know what to say. I've gone blank.
Yeah.
Go to the news.
Yes. It does happen. It does happen. But the funny thing is, you see that if you're on a song or a pre-recorded interview, and you see it counting down, and sometimes I kind of test myself. I think I've got 8 seconds to go. What am I going to talk about? But somehow it always happens.
It arrives.
So it happens.
That's both exhilarating, thrilling, and terrifying. It really is. So let's go back to the beginning, because this is your God story. Where were you born?
Excuse me, I was born in Harrow, in Middlesex, in 1964. To mum and dad, and I have a sister who's 4 years older.
And did faith feature much? That's actually quite hard to say. Did faith feature much?
Well, you did it. No, not at all. No, I mean, my family is lovely and taught me the rights and wrongs in life, but we weren't a church family. In fact, never went to church, only for weddings, christenings, and the usual. And so, no, not at all. And in fact, even now, sometimes I don't know the right things to do in church. So I still feel as if, I could never sit in the front row at church because I don't know, or I'll always be looking behind. Are you standing up? Are you sitting down? So no, we never went to church. But I found myself throughout my childhood actually enjoying a sense of peace and a sense of space and stillness, and I still do actually. And so when I was at school, I may well have been a weird child because I used to, after school, enjoy just walking to the local churchyard and actually sitting there and just enjoying the peace and
Can
the
I
stillness.
say something about that? Donna very kindly shared that with me before the interview, and I wanted to say this on air. Is that the right word? It's actually a common thing. It's not a weird thing. I've been a priest for 20 years now. It's a very, very common thing. It is television and the movies that make use of graveyards as supposedly scary places, but they make them scary. They really aren't. They are the most peaceful places around. They really are. They're places where people have gone to be in God's care. And I remember my first training incumbent, absolute legend of a priest, Father Aaron Beeman. If you're watching this, hi. He once said to me that churchyards, graveyards, and they're some of the most peaceful places that he goes to, and he'd literally just go there sometimes and just read a book to be amongst, like, if you like, God's grace. So it really is a common thing that people feel a peace in a graveyard as opposed to being scary. So it's not weird at all.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And in fact, now I also love to sit in an empty church. So between you and me, I would rather go into a church when there isn't a service just to sit. And I love that moment where you go and you walk up a church pathway and you open the door and it opens and you get the kind of the creak and the clank and you go in and just sit there in the stillness. And I love that.
So in terms of your spirituality then, it seems like at a very young age, it possibly was developing into being a bit of a contemplative spirituality, where sitting in stillness, sitting in the quiet, as it were, and allowing God to envelop you rather than you having a narrative to him all the time, really did something for you. Would that be accurate?
It's very accurate, and I still feel that now, and I think maybe that's why I love Cornwall so much, because I very, very often, if I have some spare time, go onto the coastal path and sit and just look at the sea and contemplate. So
you never really went to church, but it would seem like you had an awareness of God, because you said, the peace, going into a church, in a graveyard and that sort of stuff. Was life pretty stable at home at that time? So there wasn't anything that you needed peace from, as it were? No. You were okay?
No. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I had a really, really happy childhood.
That's
a really
wonderful.
happy childhood. I mean, the only one thing probably was that I failed my 12 plus. So all my lovely friends went off to the posh school and I went to the secondary modern.
What's the 12 plus?
Oh, you see, you're so much younger than me, honestly. No, in certain areas, in those days, it's a selective exam. So if you passed it, you went to the grammar school. If you didn't, in those days, you went to what was called the secondary modern. Whereas now it's the comprehensive system, which personally, if I can be political, it's much better. Anyway, I'll throw that in, you can edit that out. But so, yeah. So yeah, my secondary school was not, I didn't enjoy it at all. Yeah.
Are you willing to talk about why you didn't enjoy? I mean, obviously we've got the premise that you failed your 12 plus.
Yes.
But how that panned out, you know, on the ground, life in school, what was that like?
Well, because all my friends had gone to another school, I remember my school was particularly, it had a lot of problems, so much so that the local shop would ban myself and the other pupils from that school. From
you got banned from a shop.
I know.
Hear it here first.
I know.
I love that.
At lunchtime, you couldn't go into this particular shop, but you would see the other children from the other school going to this shop.
Oh, the posh ones.
The posh ones. So you felt, my goodness, I'm not really wanted in certain elements and areas of my society, my culture, and it was really difficult. So I just didn't like that, but I thought, okay, the way I can get around this is by working really, really hard. So I became a bit of a swot. And of course, with that can come certain problems that the other kids see you as being a swot, so you get tarnished.
So you fell in between the two camps?
A little bit, yes. But it didn't matter, because when I was 16, I managed then to go to the posh school with my friends.
Where was God in all this? Still no sort of awareness?
No, not really. Not as far as I could see, although when I was doing my A-levels, I, again, was working really, really hard. And I guess I was stressed, maybe. And I remember suddenly sitting there at my desk and I had this overwhelming sense, and I know this might sound a bit strange as well, an overwhelming sense of a spiritual presence. And that presence was Mary. And she was right there in my mind. And I'm sure so many people have that experience, but to me it was so real.
Oh, yeah.
So real. And I had this tremendous sense of calm and just peace. And the message was, don't worry, everything will be fine. And even now in my life, it's so powerful, even now in my life, at times of turmoil or worry or fear, I revert back to that moment and I feel it incredibly strongly.
Can we unpack that a little bit, May? It reminds me of that quote from Julian of Norwich, which I hope I'm doing it right, where she said, all will be well, all manner of things will be well. When you had this amazing experience, you say it was the Virgin Mary, it was Mary. Clearly you saw something in your mind that made you sort of think, that's Mary. So it wasn't just like it was a whole layered experience, spiritual experience. Could you describe how pictorial it was, how visual it was in your mind?
It was hugely visual.
So what did you see?
I guess, maybe because I've been looking at too many windows or too many icons or something, but I saw her in the most incredible, vivid red and blue, just in my mind.
Red and blue?
I saw red and blue.
Something tells me there's an importance to that. Any theologians out there?
Okay.
Do let us know about that.
I hadn't thought about that at all, actually, but it was a very clear image. And I know, and I don't want to build it up into something because, I'm sure a lot of people will say, she's imagining things. Possibly.
They really won't.
But in my mind, she was in my mind there. And there hadn't been a build-up to it at all. But to me, the most incredible sense of peace.
You might not know the answer to this, but do you know why maybe it was Mary who came to you as opposed to someone else?
No.
So it's not like a mother connection or anything like that?
No, I hadn't really even thought about that, actually.
I just wonder. I just wonder about that.
I don't know.
And the feeling of peace,
Yeah.
describe that, because the way in which you described it to me earlier, it felt like it was more than just a sense of, I'm relaxed, like you would even, sat in your front room watching a telly, with your feet up.
Yes.
That's nice. But this felt spiritual and supernatural, the way you described it. I don't know if it's possible to put it into words, but if you can.
Well, just that I just had this incredible feeling that in a moment, in a few seconds, all my fears and all my worries had just gone because of this amazing, amazing presence. It was just an overwhelming sense of peace and grace and stillness and power, actually.
Power.
Huge power.
Sorry to sort of milk this one, but it's really...
I haven't really ever talked about this.
Really?
This is really... No, I kind of keep it to myself because I think people think I'm very odd.
One of these days someone's going to interview me, and if you think this makes you look odd, I'm going to look like you should lock me away, because I've had so many experiences like that. In fact, actually, I'm going to share one, if I may, about the Virgin Mary. So we're in it together, okay?
Yes.
I went with my mother, which is why I probably asked you the mother connection thing. So maybe you needed a mother thing, even though your mum was great.
Yes.
Mary's like the mum of all mums, as it were. Anyway, I went to this place called Elsa Priory.
Right.
Which is in Kent, and I'm there. We're just looking around. It was probably about 10 years ago. I'm with my mum, and there's this sort of Mary sort of corner.
Yes.
With a statue, like usual sort of thing.
Yes.
And there's a little sort of kneeler, as it were. And we just got down and we started praying. Now, I didn't pray to Mary. I'm not sure about the theology of that. I'm not that way. But anyway, we just started praying basically to God. And my mother and I had the most incredible experience of Mary at that point.
Wow.
Which was overwhelming to the point where I actually got a little bit scared.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
I actually got, what is going on here?
Yes.
And because my mum had exactly the same experience, There's, if you like,
That's
the proof.
incredible.
There's the credibility.
There's the proof. Yes, absolutely. That's incredible, isn't
So,
it? My goodness, you felt that moment then.
yeah,
Yes.
so let's all be married
Yes.
together.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, I didn't ask for that, I
Yes.
was praying to God.
Yes.
Now, obviously, Mary's in
Yes.
front of me.
Gosh.
But something tangible happened to us both. It was the same experience at the same time.
Wow.
And it was
that's
overwhelming.
incredible. Yes.
So please don't feel
Yes.
awkward
Wow.
or weird. This is a safe place.
Wow, and thank you so much for sharing that.
No
That's
worries.
wonderful. My goodness.
So in terms of worrying, a bit of a theological question now. She appeared to you and said, don't worry. Don't worry. And it makes me feel that there's a big question out there for Christians and people who are exploring faith about the joy of being in a relationship with God that actually I think we're possibly not tapping into as much as we really could do, which is the notion about what we should worry in life about and what we shouldn't worry in life about.
Yes.
You know, part of the conversations I have with people in this studio is like, what do you picture the first Easter morning looking like? And you know, that first Easter morning changed everything. You know, Jesus defeated death. You know, he rose from the dead. He proved who he was and is, and nothing can destroy that now.
Yes, yes.
Jobs,
Yes.
good times, bad times, health, ill health, the whole lot. The
Yes.
resurrection life, guaranteed, everything's changed. And then that, it kind of, I think, invites a really powerful, wonderful reflection on what are we worrying about?
I know. Do
What's
you know,
important?
That's exactly it. But in life, don't you think we've all overcomplicated everything? It's all so simple. It is all so simple if you just trust to God. Because it, you know, life is about the simple gestures in life. It's a smile, it's somebody reaching a hand out to you. Every single problem in life can be solved by that. And if we trust in God, there is no need to worry. And that is, you know, I think that sounds very trite, probably, you know, to somebody who's possibly watching this, who's going through a very difficult time and is finding it very difficult, maybe impossible to trust to God. But we do need to try to dig seriously deep because it's there.
So, you've met the Virgin Mary, as you do. And then you said in your notes you went off to Hong Kong and something quite astonishing happened there as well.
Oh yes, now that was the
Stand by, everyone.
Funny thing, yeah. Well, anyway, I'd just done a year at college and I found myself on holiday with my mum and dad actually in Hong Kong, which was lovely. And we went to this place and anyway, we were in this place and through a potted palm
Say that again. A potted
palm. I saw this man over there and I looked through this potted palm. I know it sounds ridiculous. And I thought, that's the man I'm going to marry. And I know how ridiculous.
It's not. It's lovely.
I hadn't even said hello, honestly. And anyway, it turned out it was Adrian. We got talking and we're like chalk and cheese, you know. He was a policeman in Hong Kong and I still had 3 years left to do at college and I was a bit hippie-ish and, you know, so we were very different. But yeah, we were like, I went back to do 3 more years at college and we were like pen pals and yeah, we got married after that.
Not letting you get away with that.
But it was...
Rewind.
Yes.
So you're staring at him through this potted plant.
Yes.
What was that feeling like? That you said, like, I'm going to marry this person.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was the strangest thing. I have no idea. I just knew in my mind.
Really?
I really knew in my mind, oh my goodness, there's the man I'm going to marry.
Would you call it a God moment?
Yes, I would actually. I would, yes.
Okay, so it's a God
Yes,
moment. God has
it's a
somehow,
God
you
moment.
know, on a holiday brought you guys together, which I think is incredibly brilliant.
Yes.
So the romantic side, who spoke to who first?
I actually, oh no, he doesn't let me forget this, either, which is really bad.
Come on,
it really wasn't like that. But I went over and said hello, which I
Did you say, I'm going to marry you?
But it was a little bit forward, and I'm really not like that, you know. I always sort of hang back. But I thought, I must go and say hello. And that was it. Yeah.
And what did he,
He said, oh, hello, how are you?
and it just started from there?
Yeah, and because he had obviously lived in Hong Kong for some time, he said, oh, I can take you round and about if you've got a week off and show you all the sights.
Smooth.
So smooth. So that's what we did.
Didn't miss the opportunity.
Yeah, no. Do you know, I can't believe I'm talking to you. Do you know what I mean? Oh, it's lovely. Thank you.
No, thank you.
No.
Bless you. So you had the most incredible holiday
Yes,
romance by
yes,
the sounds of it.
yes, it was lovely.
And then you came back to
Yeah.
Blighty, and he was still out there arresting people.
Arresting people, yeah.
And you corresponded,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
somehow it kept going.
It did.
Because it's God ordained.
It did, yeah.
And then did he come over to England, or did you go back to him?
No, I went over. I was lucky enough because actually, I'm not sure it happens anymore, but my dad worked for the airlines. So I was able to get really cheap tickets, which is the only reason I could keep going out back
Makes you think
and
there's
forth
a
to Hong
God.
Kong. I know. So when I finished college, I went out there to live. And we got married, and I lived there for 2 years, and it
2
was
years?
brilliant.
Wow.
Really good. Yeah, so now I'm really fascinated to see what's happening in Hong Kong because,
Yeah, I'm sure.
you know, I just think that the people who are demonstrating are incredible, you know, because the mindset of people in Hong Kong, certainly when I was there, and obviously it was a long time ago, was really just to, you know, get on with life, and they're very peaceful, you know, but they are really rising up, you know, for such an amazing cause of justice.
What about 2 million people out on the streets?
2 million people, it's incredible.
It is.
You know, and Joshua Wong and all the leaders, they're amazing. I'm very humbled by seeing what they're doing. Yeah.
Wow. So you've had this God moment. You've met Adrian, I think you said his name is. And when did the children, or is it one child? One child.
Adam.
Adam.
Yeah, Adam. Well, we then came back to live in London and got on with our lives. And then we'd been married about 12 years actually, and Adam was born. And we were just having a lovely life, lived in Putney, started to go to church, St Mary's Putney, which still I have a huge place in my heart.
Great church.
St Mary's Putney, yeah. And Adam had started at St Mary's C of E school, loved it. And yeah, life was ticking on really well. Have to say at this point, thank you very much to Giles Fraser, who I know is quite controversial sometimes.
No,
He's a brilliant, and you know, it's a great part of my own faith journey because, yeah, he was vicar at St Mary's Putney, and he was the first real vicar to me in my mind who would tell it like it was. And he went out there on the streets, you know, a real campaigner for social justice. And I think that really touched a chord with me. So I used to love his sermons. He was so real, and he spoke to me and to everybody in that congregation.
So what did that do for your faith? What did it do for your understanding of Christianity?
It made me understand, like a bolt out of the blue, that actually I could engage and begin to engage with Christianity in a different way. It didn't have to be going to church and listening to the traditional sermons and, you know, knowing what to do. You could go and you could live out your faith by making a difference outside of the church, and by just really, I guess, preaching's too strong a word, but just bringing the gospel to life in a different way. And it doesn't just have to be within a church service, in the traditional way.
So for you then, correct me if I'm wrong, if I may paraphrase what I think I'm hearing back, Christianity is not just about going to a church, listening to a sermon, saying that's very nice, feel better now, going home, let's bake the cakes.
Yes.
It's about actually great sermon, I'm going to imbibe that into my soul, I'm going to go out into the streets and I'm going to make a difference.
Yes.
It is interesting that often, and I sometimes do this myself, and we all say, God, why are you allowing X, Y, Z to happen?
Yeah.
You know, all the rest of it. And yet the Bible shows that God gets really angry about those things, and social justice, you know, that's what he's all about. He wants us to change the world.
Yes.
You know, that first Easter morning.
Yes, absolutely.
Assured the victory. Now he's basically saying, church, you're the vehicle through which I'm going to change the world.
Yes.
I'm going to bring my kingdom of love to bear.
Yes.
So it's about feeding the poor and clothing the homeless.
Yes.
And that resonates with you. So social justice, social transformation.
Yes, transformation, absolutely, it does. And I see that all the time in Cornwall. in the wonderful people I'm so privileged to meet who are out there on the streets. They're at the food banks, they're, on the streets helping the homeless, and they're doing it for no personal reward or recognition. And they're there 24/7. And that's what I find incredibly humbling, because that is faith alive and transforming.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. You said earlier on, at this moment, your son Adam had a spell in hospital, and it was a significant God moment for you. Are you willing to talk about that?
Yes, yeah. He was only coming up to 2, and it was just before Christmas, actually. And I remember being at home wrapping all the presents up. It was about 3 days before Christmas. And suddenly he got very hot, and anyway, the upshot was it was suspected meningitis. So he ended up in hospital, in Kingston Hospital, and we were there over Christmas. And I remember, it was a God moment, just looking at the Christmas tree on Christmas Eve, and just hoping beyond all hope that he would be all right. And yes, he was all right.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. And at the same sort of time, you said maybe around the same sort of time, your husband, he also sort of developed.
Yes. It was a year or 2 later. Again, we thought he was going to be quite ill, actually. Anyway, the upshot was that he got better.
What did you learn about God through those 2 experiences?
Just putting my trust in God. And again, going back to the other moment, trying not to be afraid of what could happen, but just really asking for God's help to get through these moments. And certainly the moment with Adrian, we both sort of said, goodness, if we can get through this, what would we do with our lives? And at the time, we loved our life. Everything was set, but we both had a very, very clear vision. We'd like to go to Cornwall.
Tell me about how that happened, right? Because was it like you were having dinner and then you both said it at the same time? You emailed each other and said, "I think we should go to Cornwall." It's funny you should say that.
No, it was just an overwhelming sense. We need to go to Cornwall.
But how did you articulate it to each other, if you can remember?
Well, we both had a passion for Cornwall, but it was a place where we thought we'd never, ever be able to live, because that was just something that we didn't do. We had jobs, Adam was at school and happy, and, our lives were really, really good. But we just have and had a place in our hearts for Cornwall. I think because a few years back we'd started going on holiday, and one of the place very close to my heart is a place called Doyden, and it's on the North Cornwall coast.
Say again?
Doyden. Yes, Doyden. And it's on the North Cornwall coast, just above Port Quin, quite close to Port Isaac, which of course now is very famous.
Yes.
And we went down to stay there at this little folly. It's right on the edge of the cliff. And it said something to us, it spoke to us. And we went there, it was the last week of November, pouring with rain, but it's the most magical place. And we used to stand on the cliff path with all the seagulls wheeling around. And again, so incredibly spiritual. And that, we used to periodically go back to visit, but it touched something within. And we knew that Cornwall is where we had to be. So literally, against all the advice from our parents and our friends who said, "What on earth are you doing? You work in London. You've got a house, what's going on here? Adam's happy." We said, well, one day we're going to Cornwall. And they said, well, you can't. For a start, what are you going to do for work? And we said, well, we'll just trust in God. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Our house sold within 3 weeks, and we found ourselves on the road, 11:30 one night, heading off down the A3 and the A303.
The famous 303.
And then the A30 into Cornwall. Yeah, knowing not one person in Cornwall.
Do you now know why he called you to the southwest?
I have a sense that I know. I don't know, I will never really know, but in my heart I feel that it was the right thing. And I feel that there is so much that God is doing in Cornwall and the southwest.
What is he doing in Cornwall?
he is right there on the streets at a time where people seriously need him. He's there everywhere. And people need him now so much, really. And if I can play a tiny, tiny, tiny little part through the medium of radio in trying to help connect and raise awareness of certain issues, then that, I think, is one of the reasons that we're there.
So playing a primary role in being a champion for social transformation in now the platform that God has given you working for the BBC is one of the primary reasons as to why he brought you to the Southwest.
Well, it sounds terribly
No, it's great. It does. It's brilliant.
No, but in my heart, I think, and I'm immensely privileged to have to be able to have a medium where I can perhaps help to raise in a little way, issues of importance and try to help to talk about God and his relevance in our society today, because I think that, and what you're doing with God Stories today is amazing, because I think for many, many years, unless you were connected with the church and in a formal way, people never spoke about God. They never spoke about Jesus. They never spoke about faith. Maybe they did in their own homes, and that's wonderful. Maybe they did with themselves, and that is amazing. But actually now I feel a great sense that there is a power and an eagerness to actually talk, and a confidence actually to talk about faith and to speak out about faith in a way that perhaps we didn't do years ago. We didn't feel we were able to do.
Why do you think that season has come upon us?
Because of what's happening
Right.
in the world and in our country. I think at the moment there is a great need, a desperate need.
Can I just say, there's nothing wrong, if I may humbly say, of using that which God has given you in a big way. Parable of the talents.
Yes.
Yeah? It's actually wrong to not use what he's giving you in a big way. So can I encourage you, go for it.
Thank you.
It's fine to think I'm a BBC presenter on BBC Radio Cornwall. I've had this career in the BBC as well. Use it.
Yes.
So that's fine.
Well, I'm immensely privileged actually, because when I was first asked, would I like to take the Sunday, can I tell you this actually, just between you and me?
Stand by.
Yes.
Am I recording? Yes, I'm recording. I'm waiting.
When I was first asked, would you like to take over the Sunday breakfast programme, I said no.
Really?
Because they said, why? And I said, because I'm not religious. I don't know anything about religion. And they said, well, you can just make it your own programme.
Wonderful.
And now it is so much a part of my life. I am so privileged because through that programme, I meet the most incredible people who are transforming the world, basically.
you went, this logged in my mind, you went to that place on the north coast of Cornwall, and it touched you. There's something about the place. You described it as incredibly spiritual, and I felt the notion of like it locked into your soul, and it resonated with your soul, almost like one and the same thing. You met yours, the same thing.
Yes.
I worked for 2 years in Truro Diocese, helping them to set up the first wave of what was needed to put a network of resource churches across that land. And part of my work was to go out into all four corners of Cornwall and see what was going on. And I would always come back incredibly excited.
Yes.
I think I was sent out with, I don't know, this narrative about just how hard things are, and just and spiritually, and just how the church is in need of something, and other such stuff. And yet I would come back thinking, God's doing something remarkable in this land. And I can't help but feel that you are and are going to be playing a part in whatever that is, as it only but intensifies, because that's how I see it. And what I kind of saw was the contemplative spirituality of, if you like, the monastic sort of fathers and mothers who brought Christianity to this part of the world, being revived for today to rescue the depths of that for a much needed, population who are screaming out for something to rest their lives on. They need the truth. So I found like the heritage of the past was screaming out to be alive for today, because it's what people need. That's you.
Yes. Well, thank you. You are so articulate. But yeah, absolutely. It is the heritage now. Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting
absolutely.
tingly.
You're amazing. No, it is so true. You've actually put into words, you've summed up what Cornwall is and the Southwest is right now. And there is a huge energy that something is about to happen.
Yep. So you're here, you're down in Truro, and you're the BBC radio presenter. How did that feel when you started being the BBC radio presenter for it's incredible.
Oh, it's just the most amazing privilege. I love every single second of it. It's just wonderful. Yeah, I work with some really wonderful colleagues, and it's a tremendous privilege. You just look out of the window and you see the river, and hear the seagulls, and I love it. But I love mainly, the freedom actually it gives me to go out and about to meet extraordinary people, and some of the people who have, everybody teaches me something. I always think that, as we said at the beginning, we're all on a journey, and I learn so much about myself through others, and pilgrimage actually has become a huge part of my life. And at this point, can I just mention, you mentioned the heritage of Cornwall and the Celtic saints and so on. There is a pilgrimage to a monastery called Llandavenec in Brittany.
Glad you said that.
Yes, yeah, I know. I'm sure I pronounced it wrongly, but the Diocese of Truro actually, and the Methodist Church set up a few years ago a church leaders ecumenical pilgrimage to Llandavenec, just for 5 days, to this amazing abbey. And for the last 3 years, I've actually been part of that, been able to go onto that pilgrimage, and I've learnt so much. It's all about unity, it's about walking together, and the wonderful, wonderful abbot, who's called Jean-Michel, who will sit with you and just, I remember actually, again, thinking about contemplation. One day last year, actually, he said, I'm just going to show you my sanctuary. And we walked up into this beautiful spot overlooking the river. And we sat there and we just looked. We didn't really say anything, but we just looked at this river. And I thought, I'm sitting here with the abbot. Not quite sure why, but it was just wonderful. And that sense of peace has again resonated with me so much. And in fact, we've just come back. We went last month again, a group of wonderful pilgrims from Cornwall, and we were there this time with the new Bishop of Truro, Bishop Philip, who's wonderful,
great guy.
And also the chair of Cornwall's Methodists, and Methodists in the Isles of Scilly, the Reverend Stephen Wild, who is a great wonderful.
I met him once.
Yeah, he's just, honestly, he means so much to me in my life. He's amazing. And we were sitting there, it was Steve and some pilgrims and me at this table just having lunch. And we were just talking about things. And then suddenly all of us stopped, and there were about 6 of us at the table. And honestly, all of us felt something. And Steve put it in the words. He said, well, there we are. That's the Holy Spirit.
Wow.
And the power of it, actually, I started to cry, which I do cry a lot. It was just like that, and we all felt it at the table. And there we were just chatting over lunch, you know. And so certain moments in my life, I
What does this
know,
mean for the Southwestern Revival?
through the incredible people, you know, doing amazing things, the Holy Spirit is there, right there, and sometimes so tangible.
Apparently you went to the Holy Land recently, where it all started, and so forth. So what was that like? I've been lucky enough to be out there 3 times, actually.
Wow.
I never thought I'd ever go.
Gosh, no.
I really
no,
didn't. And then suddenly
no.
there was this like cheap deal going, and then there was another cheap deal going. I thought, oh, happy days.
Wonderful.
So off I trotted.
Wow.
I could live out there, actually.
Yeah, it's an amazing place, isn't it? And I think once, as you say, if you're fortunate enough to go there, you'll never ever forget it.
Yeah.
It leaves such a huge impression. Well, no, I went for work actually, because the wonderful Reverend Danny Reed, who is the Methodist preacher in Helston, Central Methodist Helston, he was organising a pilgrimage, and so I was just chatting about it at work one day. I said, "Oh, I'd love to go," and my managing editor, thank you, said, "Well, go then."
Can I have one of those?
I know.
Who's your managing editor?
I know. But it was wonderful because I went, you know, alongside the incredible Cornish pilgrims, and I was able to make some pieces, and I kept a pilgrimage diary, and, you know, so it made some good, you know, really good pieces. And we followed the Cornish pilgrims' progress, you know, in the Holy Land, and went to some wonderful places. But the impression that I have, and the most amazing, one of the most amazing experiences of my life actually, was that because I was working, I was there for Palm Sunday actually.
Wow.
And I had to do some interviews back in London down the line for Palm Sunday. They wanted someone in Jerusalem, so I was there, which was great. But it did mean that I couldn't join the other pilgrims when they were going somewhere else. So I thought, okay, after these interviews, what can I do? It's Palm Sunday. I'm in Jerusalem. I think I know what I can do. So I took myself off, and it was wonderful, potted around Jerusalem. And I was very, very early for the procession. So I thought, okay, well, that's fine. I'll still go up to the Mount of Olives. And I found myself lost, actually, on the Mount of Olives, climbing up hundreds of steps.
Steep, isn't it?
Steep. It's so steep, and it was so hot.
Jesus was fit.
Yeah, he really was fit, seriously, honestly. And I got halfway up, and I thought, where is everybody? There's nobody here. And I suddenly started to think, oh my goodness, you are silly, Donna. You've got no charge in your mobile phone. You've got the other pilgrims have no idea where you are, and there's nobody around. So I thought, right, okay, well, I'll carry on going up those steps. Nobody around at all. Everything was silent. And then, you won't believe this, but it's absolutely true.
Virgin Mary appeared. Angels. Shepherds.
A harp. No, seriously.
Jesus on a donkey.
A harp. I could hear a harp sound. Donna, don't be ridiculous.
I thought you were
This is
joking.
ridiculous. No,
That's amazing.
I could hear a harp.
Did you
So I
find...
carry on going up, and there is a beautiful young girl, seriously a teenager, with her mum and dad. They were from Japan, and she was sitting on one of the steps playing a miniature harp. The most beautiful music, and I thought, oh, how amazing is that?
Gosh.
So that was fine. I thought, okay, I'm just carrying on going. Up I went, up some more steps, and I thought, I can't quite believe what's happening to me here. Anyway, carried on up the steps, and 3 beautiful children appeared. I know. And I looked at them, and they could see that I was lost, because I was starting to get a little bit worried, actually.
Was it cherubim 1, 2 and 3?
No. I've actually got a photograph of them just to prove it.
Did it come out, or was it all blurry and light?
No. But do you know what? Because I was beginning to get so worried because what am I doing? This is a little bit silly. You know, these 3 children, their smiles were so beautiful, and they immediately saw that I was lost, and they reassured me through their smiles. And it made me think about these beautiful, simple gestures that don't cost anything, but can change your life. And these children, I will never forget them. And one of them then obviously knew where I was going, because she disappeared into the garden at the side and came back with a palm frond, little palm frond that she picked from a tree or something, wherever you get palm fronds from. And she gave it to me, and I've actually got a photograph which I put on Twitter last year of these beautiful children. And in that one moment I knew everything was going to be all right, so I carried on. And of course up at the top, people were gathering for the procession, and then we had the most amazing procession down. But it was the simple gesture that really, a gesture can change your life. Really, it can. And can I tell you about something else?
Go for it.
Rambling.
You're not rambling at all.
No, the other wonderful moment at in the Holy Land was that in my mind I had been thinking, and my husband actually said to me, Donna, when you're in the Holy Land, why don't you ask if you can be baptised in the River Jordan? And I said, oh no, I can't do that, I can't do that. But it sowed a seed within me. And I thought, oh my goodness, gosh. And some of the other pilgrims were actually on their journey towards baptism in the River Jordan. And the Reverend Danny Reed was so encouraging. But I thought, oh no, that's not something that I can do. I don't feel that, I really can't do that. So I put it away from my mind and thought, I can't do it. It's just not right. I feel a bit of an imposter, you know. I just can't do it. My faith isn't, it's interesting, isn't it? I thought my faith isn't strong enough to do that. I'm not worthy of that. So anyway, the morning of the baptism, the day that we were going to the River Jordan, came, and I was late down to breakfast, and the canteen cafeteria place was absolutely chock-a-block with people, and I saw my pilgrim brothers and sisters, and there were no spaces, and I looked around and I thought, and actually there was one space there, so I thought, okay, I'll go and sit there. Just one space left in the whole canteen. So I went and sat down and sat next to one of the pilgrims who was about to be baptised. And I said, oh, wonderful. I was talking to her. And she said, Donna, why don't you? And I said, no, I can't. And then somebody else came and said, you can walk with us. Well, I did, and it was amazing. It did, yeah. But had that one seat not been vacant, then I wouldn't. And it's, again, so life-changing. Yeah, amazing. It's amazing. And in fact, I always wear this, because after my baptism, one of the pilgrims, a lovely lady called Jen, she bought it for me and she gave it to me.
She bought that from Jerusalem?
Yes,
she did?
From the River Jordan, yeah. And
so
she gave it to me, and I never take that off.
The River Jordan?
Yes.
That's
full
amazing.
Immersion.
Really?
It was amazing, and I can't bear the water. I'm terrified of the water.
That's such a
I'm so scared of the water.
Did you have to put like
an
you put the
white,
or something?
You put a white thing on, and
which
you
is
go
scary,
along.
isn't it?
Yeah, I know. And then you wait, and there were 3 of us from our pilgrimage, and it was amazing. And
how did it feel when you went into the waters and you came out again?
Amazing. Really, really, really amazing. And you see all your amazing pilgrim brothers and sisters sitting and encouraging, really encouraging, and it is amazing.
God,
yes.
Wow. Not many people can say they've been baptised in the River
Well,
Jordan.
no, I'm incredibly, incredibly privileged.
Gosh, well, anything else from your God story?
No, I think you've probably heard enough, to be very honest with you.
From the woman who said there's not much to talk about. This is just amazing. It really is.
Thank you. Well, you know, I mean, I think your other guests have been just beautiful.
God's brought some amazing people.
Yeah.
He really has.
And what a privilege to be able to sit here. Thank you.
Bless you. It almost doesn't feel right to go into my spotlight quiz at the end, but I'm going to do it anyway.
I'm a bit scared of this bit.
It's just a few fun questions.
Okay.
They're one-liners. It's meant to be like quick response, that sort of stuff. And it's just a bit of fun so that people can know you in a different way, because we've kind of almost heard your soul now, which is the most priceless thing. And anyone who does sit in that chair, I actually think it's one of the most generous things, actually, because you really are, well, if you are willing to open up yourself in a way that you don't really get a chance to in any other context. And it's on film as well, so it's quite a thing. But this thing, it's just the fun side of stuff. Okay. Is that right?
Yeah.
A psychologist would have a field day. Okay, but it's just
don't
the fun
analyse it afterwards, seriously.
Okay, here we go. What's your secret pleasure?
Cake, unfortunately. Seriously, all the time.
She bought me some Cornish saffron cake. Woohoo! So cake.
Cake, without
Wonderful.
doubt.
I'm with you on that one. Favourite cereal?
Porridge with lots of syrup. And I know it's terrible, but I have a sweet tooth.
Totally with you on that one. Dark or milk chocolate?
Dark.
Can you reverse park?
Yeah, quite good.
Well done. When you were young, because obviously you're happily married now, film star crush?
Oh, gosh, that's really hard. I can't say film star crush, but my all-time crush, I suppose, David Bowie.
Oh, really? That's super cool.
Oh, no,
Did you ever
David
meet him
Bowie.
in your BBC?
No, but he smiled at me.
So you met him in that way?
No, never in the BBC. No, never in the BBC. But I went to see him 16 times in concert. I'm that much of a fan.
Super cool.
And
he clocked eyes with you?
Yeah, he was playing at the Shepherd's Bush Empire one day, and of course I worked up the road. So went there and hung around the stage door afterwards, and he came out. He came out with his wife Iman, and he smiled, and it was the most beautiful smile.
That's
it was so lovely.
Amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
The thing you can't live without?
My family.
Yeah.
I know, of course.
Good answer.
Yes.
If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
I'd love to be able to fly.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
And no one else has said that.
No.
Respect.
Wouldn't it be amazing?
It really would.
Swooping and swirling. How
Really would.
wonderful.
Almost there. Do you have a party trick? I don't.
No,
I'm naff
I
like that.
don't. But do you know, I love singing,
Ah.
and I love singing. Except I've got the most terrible singing voice. So if I would have the chance to sing a little ditty or something like that, I would.
Really?
But I'd be stopped.
Fancy giving it a go?
No.
I had to ask. Have you ever seen an angel? I think you saw 3 on the Mount of Olives.
Yeah, I think I have. I have. Yes.
You meet Jesus face to face for the very first time in heaven. What's the first thing you'd like to ask him?
Gosh. Why have you been so amazing?
You meet Jesus face to face in heaven. What's the first thing that you'd like him to say to you?
I'd like him to say thank you.
Donna, you've been amazing. You really
Oh
have.
no! Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Honestly,
Thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you
like
for what you're
Miranda.
doing. Yeah, it is, isn't it? I could sing Heather Small now. Yeah, but it
I
has
nearly
been,
did it then. I almost nearly did it then.
But honestly, it's been the most amazing privilege. Thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you for sharing. There is a growing tradition on God Stories Today for the interviewee to pray us out. I know for some people that's actually quite a difficult thing, so you don't have to if you don't want to.
Yes.
But if you're willing, just say a short prayer.
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. And just have the viewers in mind as you do it.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dear Lord, thank you for this amazing privilege. Thank you for Chris and his wife Donna for all they're doing in the Southwest. Thank you to everybody who is listening and watching and giving your time to hear what we've been talking about today. Dear Lord, thank you for being in our lives and for meeting us where we need you, for doing the most incredible things in our world. Dear Lord, please help those who need you so much at this time, and help us all to learn how to reach out more to one another, to connect, to engage, and to help give people the encouragement to see their lives in a new light. Thank you for your comfort and for your guiding presence. Thank you for helping us understand your message of love. Amen.